The winter of 1874 settled over the frontier like a merciless blanket of ice. Snow swept endlessly across the plains, burying wagon trails, fencing posts, and every trace of color beneath a world of white. The wind howled through the naked cottonwood trees and rattled cabin walls with such force that many settlers feared the season would break them before spring ever arrived. On the edge of Comanche territory, far from the nearest settlement, a solitary cabin stood against the storm. Inside lived Tosawi. At 33 years old, Tosawi was a man many people remembered long after meeting him. He possessed strong features, broad shoulders, and a natural dignity that seemed impossible to ignore. Even those who disliked him admitted he was remarkably handsome. Yet 12 years earlier, an accident had stolen something far more valuable than appearance. It had taken his sight. For 12 long years, darkness had followed him everywhere. Doctors had examined him. Traveling healers had made promises. Medicine men and frontier physicians alike had offered remedies. None had worked. Eventually, people stopped discussing a cure. They simply referred to him as the blind Comanche. Tosawi hated the title. He had once ridden freely across the plains, guided by nothing but instinct and confidence. Now every movement required caution and memory. Though he had adapted better than most men ever could, there were nights when the darkness felt heavier than the winter sky outside his cabin. The loneliness was worse. Over the years, women had come into his life more than once. Some had been drawn by his reputation. Others admired his appearance or the land he owned. A few spoke sweetly and promised companionship. But the pattern never changed. The moment they learned the handsome Comanche could not see, their enthusiasm faded. Some left politely. Others disappeared without explanation. A few stayed just long enough to reveal their true intentions. Every departure left another scar. Every disappointment taught him not to trust easily. By the 12th year, Tosawi had convinced himself that genuine affection simply wasn't meant for him. That snowy afternoon, he sat beside the fireplace listening to the storm outside. The crackling flames filled the cabin with warmth, but they could not quiet the emptiness that lingered in the rooms. The silence had become his closest companion. Then he heard something unusual. Footsteps. Slow, careful footsteps crunching through deep snow. His head turned toward the door. Visitors rarely came during storms. A moment later, there was a knock. Tosawi rose from his chair and crossed the room with practiced familiarity. His hand found the latch. When he opened the door, a gust of freezing wind rushed inside. For several seconds, neither person spoke. Then a woman's voice broke the silence. "Mr. Tosawi?" The voice sounded young yet weary. "Yes," he replied cautiously. "My name is Rebecca Miller." Tosawi had never heard the name before. "What do you want?" The woman hesitated. "I heard you might need help around your home." Her words immediately stirred suspicion. He had heard similar introductions before. People often arrived with smiles and good intentions. Most eventually revealed another motive. The storm whistled behind her. "You traveled all this way during a blizzard to ask for work?" he said. "Yes." "Why?" Rebecca took a deep breath. "Because I need it." There was no hesitation in her answer. No attempt to flatter him. No exaggerated kindness. Just honesty. Tosawi remained silent. Rebecca continued. "My husband died nearly 2 years ago. Since then I've been doing whatever work I can find. This winter has been hard. Harder than any before." The wind carried snow into the doorway. "I don't want charity," she added quietly. "I only want a chance to earn a living." Something about her tone felt different. Most people tried to impress him. Rebecca sounded exhausted. Not manipulative. Not desperate for attention. Simply tired. Tired of struggling. Tired of surviving. "You should come inside before you freeze," Tosawi said. Rebecca stepped into the cabin. She removed her worn coat and brushed snow from her sleeves. The sight would have surprised anyone who expected frontier beauty to arrive dressed in elegance. Her clothing was simple. Her boots showed signs of repeated repairs. Yet despite the hardships life had placed upon her, Rebecca possessed a natural beauty impossible to hide. The firelight softened her delicate features and highlighted the determination in her eyes. Tosawi, of course, could not see any of it. He only listened. "What kind of work can you do?" he asked. "Cook." "Anything else?" "Clean." "What else?" She almost laughed. "I can sew, mend clothes, haul water, chop kindling, care for animals, and make bread that won't poison you." A faint smile appeared on Tosawi's face before he could stop it. That alone was unusual. Few people managed to make him smile anymore. Rebecca noticed. The small success encouraged her. "I can work hard," she said. "That's the truth. And why should I believe you?" Her answer came immediately. "You shouldn't." The response surprised him. "You don't know me," she continued. "You have no reason to trust me today. That's why I'm asking for an opportunity, not trust. Trust comes later." For several moments, the cabin fell silent. Tosawi listened carefully. No nervous excitement. No false charm. No hidden greed. Only sincerity. He found himself curious. That feeling alone was rare. "What have people told you about me?" he asked. Rebecca hesitated. "That you're blind." The word landed between them. Most people spoke it with pity. Rebecca simply stated it as fact. Nothing more. Tosawi folded his arms. "And did that change your mind?" "No." "Why not?" Rebecca looked toward the fireplace. "Because the answer was simple. Everyone needs someone," she said softly. "You need help. I need work. That's all I thought about." For reasons he couldn't fully explain, her words struck him deeply. Everyone needs someone. 12 years of darkness had taught him how quickly people abandoned those they considered imperfect. Yet this woman stood in his cabin speaking to him, as if blindness were only one small part of who he was. Not his entire identity. The realization unsettled him. It also gave him something he had not felt in a long time. Hope. Small. Fragile. Dangerous. But hope nonetheless. After discussing practical arrangements, Rebecca prepared to leave before the storm worsened. She buttoned her coat and pulled her scarf around her neck. At the door, she paused. "If you decide to hire me," she said, "I'll prove my worth." Tosawi nodded slowly. "And if I don't?" Rebecca smiled sadly. "Then I'll keep looking for work somewhere else." No anger. No pleading. No manipulation. Just determination. A moment later she stepped outside. The snow immediately swallowed her footprints. Tosawi stood in the doorway listening as her footsteps gradually faded into the storm. Then silence returned. He closed the door and moved back toward the fireplace. For years he had trained himself not to expect anything from people. Expectations led to disappointment. Disappointment led to pain. Yet as the wind rattled the cabin walls and snow fell endlessly across the frontier, he found himself thinking about the young widow who had walked through a blizzard simply for the chance to work. She had not treated him like a burden. She had not offered sympathy. She had not tried to charm him. For the first time in many winters, the lonely Comanche allowed himself to wonder if perhaps fate had sent someone different. Someone worth trusting. Someone who might see beyond his blindness. And as Rebecca disappeared into the falling snow, Tosawi sat quietly beside the fire, unable to stop asking himself a question he had not dared ask in years. What if she stayed? The morning after Rebecca's visit, the storm finally eased. The frontier remained buried beneath deep snow, but the fierce winds had quieted. A pale winter sun emerged from behind the clouds, casting silver light across the frozen landscape. Shortly after sunrise, Tosawi heard familiar footsteps approaching his cabin. Rebecca had returned. True to her word. Something inside him relaxed at the sound. Most people made promises easily. Few kept them. When he opened the door, Rebecca entered carrying a small bundle of supplies and enough determination to challenge the winter itself. "I hope I'm not late," she said. "You came." "I said I would." The simple exchange lingered in Tosawi's mind long after she stepped inside. Over the following days, Rebecca quickly became part of the cabin's daily rhythm. Each morning she rose before dawn to light the stove and prepare breakfast. She swept the floors, repaired worn clothing, organized supplies, and kept the house warmer than it had been in years. What surprised Tosawi most was not her skill. It was her attitude. She never treated him as helpless. When he reached for something, she didn't rush to grab it first. When he moved through the cabin, she allowed him to navigate on his own. When he made mistakes, she didn't respond with pity. She simply helped when help was needed. Nothing more. Nothing less. For 12 years, people had assumed blindness made him incapable. Rebecca seemed to understand something few others ever had. Tosawi was blind. He wasn't broken. As the weeks passed, a quiet companionship began growing between them. The cabin no longer felt empty. The silence that once weighed heavily upon him gradually transformed into something comforting. He could hear Rebecca humming softly while she worked. He could identify her footsteps in every room. He learned the subtle differences between her happy laughter and her tired laughter. Without realizing it, he began looking forward to each day. Rebecca noticed changes as well. The stern, guarded man she had first met slowly revealed hidden sides of himself. Tosawi possessed a dry sense of humor. He enjoyed storytelling. He could identify approaching weather changes before anyone else. His knowledge of the land was astonishing. Even without sight, he seemed deeply connected to every sound, scent, and movement around him. One snowy evening, they sat beside the fireplace after supper. Outside, snowflakes drifted quietly across the dark prairie. Inside, the fire crackled warmly. Rebecca finished mending one of Tosawi's shirts and placed it beside him. "There," she said. "Is it fixed?" "Better than fixed." "That good?" Rebecca smiled. "Don't let it go to your head." A rare laugh escaped him. The sound surprised both of them. For a moment neither spoke. Then Rebecca stared into the flames. "My husband used to laugh like that." The words came softly. Almost accidentally. Tosawi's smile faded. "I'm sorry." Rebecca remained silent for several seconds. "When he died, I thought the loneliness would eventually get easier." "It didn't." She shook her head. "No." The answer carried years of grief. Tosawi listened carefully. Rebecca rarely spoke about her past. When she did, every word mattered. "We weren't rich," she continued. "Most days we barely had enough. But I always knew someone was waiting for me at home." Her voice weakened slightly. After he was gone, the house felt different. The fire popped. The silence became unbearable. Tosawi understood immediately. Because he had spent 12 years living inside silence. "Loneliness can be louder than people realize," he said quietly. Rebecca looked toward him. For the first time, she saw genuine understanding in his expression. Not sympathy. Understanding. The difference mattered. "What about you?" she asked. Tosawi leaned back in his chair. At first he said nothing. Then, slowly, he began speaking. He told her about losing his sight. He described the fear that followed. The frustration. The helplessness. The endless visits to doctors who promised hope and delivered disappointment. Most painful of all, he told her about the women. Rebecca listened carefully. Every single story ended the same way. Interest. Excitement. Discovery. Departure. "They always left," Tosawi said. His voice remained calm, but Rebecca sensed the hurt beneath it. "Every one of them?" "Every one." "Why?" A bitter smile touched his lips. "Because they wanted the handsome Comanche." The words hung heavily in the room. "When they learned I couldn't see," he continued, "they stopped seeing me." Rebecca felt her chest tighten. 12 years. 12 years of rejection. 12 years of people measuring his worth through his blindness. No wonder he struggled to trust. No wonder he kept emotional distance between himself and others. The miracle wasn't that he seemed guarded. The miracle was that he still allowed anyone close at all. From that night forward, their conversations deepened. They shared memories, dreams, regrets, fears. The friendship growing between them felt natural. Neither rushed it. Neither questioned it. Yet something was changing. Something neither could ignore forever. Rebecca found herself smiling whenever Tosawi entered a room. She enjoyed hearing his stories. She admired his resilience, his kindness, his strength. Meanwhile, Tosawi found himself listening for her footsteps every morning. The sound reassured him in ways he didn't fully understand. Her presence had become important. Dangerously important. One evening, nearly 6 weeks after Rebecca began working at the cabin, snow fell gently outside while darkness settled across the prairie. They sat near the fire as usual. Neither spoke much. The silence felt comfortable. Then Tosawi suddenly said something unexpected. "Rebecca." "Yes." "May I ask you something strange?" She laughed softly. "That depends how strange." He hesitated. Then spoke. "May I touch your face?" The question startled her. For several moments, she simply stared. Tosawi immediately sensed her surprise. "You don't have to say yes." "No," Rebecca replied quickly. "It's not that." "Then what?" She smiled nervously. "I wasn't expecting that question." Tosawi lowered his head slightly. "Forget I asked." Rebecca watched him. Something about his expression made her curious. After a moment, she moved closer. "You may." Tosawi froze. "Are you sure?" "Yes." His hands lifted slowly. Carefully. Respectfully. When his fingertips touched her face, Rebecca felt an unexpected shiver. Not fear. Something else. Something gentler. Something intimate. Tosawi moved with incredible concentration. His fingers traced her forehead. Her eyebrows. The curve of her cheeks. The shape of her nose. He memorized every detail. Every angle. Every contour. Rebecca sat perfectly still. Watching him. The intensity of his focus fascinated her. His blindness seemed to disappear. Not physically, but emotionally. In that moment, he appeared to be seeing her in a way few people ever could. Not through sight. Through understanding. Minutes passed. Finally, his hands lowered. A thoughtful expression crossed his face. Rebecca smiled. "Well?" Tosawi stood. "I need paper." She blinked. "Paper? And charcoal?" Confused but curious, Rebecca retrieved both items. Tosawi sat at the table. Then, without explanation, he began drawing. Rebecca stared. Surely he couldn't. But he did. Slowly. Patiently. Confidently. His charcoal moved across the paper. Line after line. Curve after curve. The room remained silent except for the scratching sound of charcoal against paper. Rebecca watched in complete disbelief. Nearly an hour passed. Finally, Tosawi set down the charcoal. The room became still. He extended the paper toward her. Rebecca accepted it. Then she looked. And gasped. Her eyes widened. The portrait staring back at her was astonishing. Every detail. Every feature. Every proportion. Perfect. It was her. Not approximately. Not vaguely. Exactly. The resemblance was so precise that it felt impossible. Rebecca looked from the portrait to Tosawi. Then back again. Her heart pounded. "How?" she whispered. Tosawi looked uncomfortable. "I remember what I touch." Rebecca shook her head. "No." A smile of disbelief crossed her face. "This is incredible." For years, Tosawi had hidden this talent from most people. Some found it fascinating. Others found it unsettling. Several women had reacted strangely afterward. As Rebecca studied the portrait, fear quietly entered his thoughts. Here it comes. The distance. The discomfort. The change. Every relationship eventually reached the same point. Sooner or later, people decided he was too different. Too complicated. Too much work. He waited. Preparing himself. But Rebecca's reaction never came. Instead, tears filled her eyes. Tosawi immediately noticed. "What's wrong?" Rebecca looked at the drawing again. "Nothing's wrong." "Then why are you crying?" Her voice trembled. Because nobody has ever seen me this clearly before. The words struck him deeply. Rebecca placed the portrait against her chest. It's beautiful. Tosawi remained speechless. She wasn't afraid. She wasn't pulling away. She wasn't treating him differently. If anything, she seemed closer than before. That realization filled him with a cautious happiness he barely dared trust. From that evening onward, the bond between them strengthened rapidly. The barriers separating them continued to fall. Laughter came easier. Conversations lasted longer. The cabin felt warmer. Even the long winter nights seemed shorter. One evening, after another snowfall, they stood outside beneath a sky crowded with stars. The world around them was silent. Snow sparkled beneath the moonlight. Rebecca looked toward Tosawi. He couldn't see the stars. Yet somehow he appeared more connected to the night than anyone else. I wish you could see this, she said softly. Tosawi smiled. What does it look like? Rebecca searched for words. It's beautiful. He nodded. Then turned toward her voice. So are you. Rebecca's breath caught. For several seconds, neither moved. Neither spoke. The cold air seemed to disappear entirely. Slowly, Rebecca stepped closer. Tosawi sensed her presence. His heart pounded. The moment felt fragile. Like something that could break if either of them moved too quickly. Then Rebecca gently placed her hand against his cheek. Tosawi covered it with his own. Their first kiss followed naturally. Soft. Tender. Careful. A promise rather than a declaration. When they finally stepped apart, neither could stop smiling. For the first time in years, happiness felt possible. Real. Within reach. Yet beneath Tosawi's growing joy, fear remained. Fear had lived with him too long to disappear overnight. Every woman before Rebecca had eventually left. Every promise had eventually broken. Every hope had eventually hurt. Some nights he lay awake listening to the winter wind outside. Wondering. Waiting. Expecting disappointment. Because happiness felt dangerous. The more he cared for Rebecca, the more he risked losing her. And losing her would hurt far more than any rejection before. That realization terrified him. Late one night, after Rebecca had gone to bed, Tosawi remained alone beside the dying fire. The cabin was quiet. Only the crackling embers remained. He bowed his head. For years he had stopped asking fate for favors. Stopped asking for miracles. Stopped believing hope accomplished anything. But tonight was different. Tonight there was someone worth praying for. Someone worth hoping for. Someone worth risking his heart for. As the fire slowly faded and winter darkness surrounded the cabin, Tosawi whispered a silent prayer into the night. Not for his eyesight. Not for wealth. Not for anything he had once wanted. Only for Rebecca. And for the chance that she might be the one person who would stay when everyone else had gone. The one person who truly saw him. The one person he was already beginning to love. And as the wind whispered across the frozen prairie beyond the cabin walls, Tosawi prayed with all his heart that Rebecca Miller was not another temporary visitor in his life. As February settled across the frontier, winter tightened its grip on the land. Snow covered the plains in endless waves of white, and icy winds swept through the settlements with relentless force. Yet despite the harsh weather, life continued. Settlers gathered at trading posts, church meetings, and supply stores whenever storms allowed. And wherever people gathered, rumors followed. Rebecca soon became one of the settlement's favorite subjects. At first the whispers were small. Then they grew. Some people questioned why a young and beautiful widow spent so much time with a blind Comanche. Others found the relationship strange. A few openly disapproved. Rebecca ignored most of it. She had learned long ago that people always found reasons to judge others. But gossip has a way of spreading like wildfire. One afternoon she visited the general store to purchase flour and lamp oil. As she waited near the counter, two women spoke nearby. They made little effort to lower their voices. She's wasting her youth. Rebecca pretended not to hear. Such a pretty woman. And for what? Living in a cabin with a blind man. The other woman sighed dramatically. She could do much better. Rebecca quietly paid for her supplies. She left without responding. But the words followed her all the way home. A week later, a new problem arrived. His name was William Carter. William owned one of the largest ranches in the region. He was wealthy, respected, and fully aware of it. Tall and confident, he represented everything frontier society considered desirable. A successful rancher. A landowner. A man with influence. The moment William noticed Rebecca, he decided to pursue her. At first his attention seemed harmless. A polite conversation. A compliment. An invitation to dinner. Rebecca declined. William tried again. She declined again. Unfortunately, rejection only seemed to increase his determination. Soon he was sending gifts. Flowers. Fresh food. Small luxuries rarely available during winter. Rebecca returned every gift. Yet William remained persistent. "Why keep struggling?" he asked one afternoon. "You deserve comfort." Rebecca smiled politely. "I'm doing fine. You don't have to spend your life taking care of someone." The implication angered her. "Tosawi takes care of himself." William shrugged. "Perhaps." Then he added the words she hated most. "But you could have so much more." Rebecca immediately ended the conversation. Unfortunately, she wasn't the only person hearing such comments. Tosawi heard them too. At first only fragments. Passing remarks. Half-finished conversations. But eventually, he overheard enough to understand. One evening while collecting supplies from a nearby trading post, he heard several men speaking. The ranchers serious about her. Can't blame him. Rebecca would be a fool to refuse. Someone laughed. Especially when the alternative is staying with that blind Comanche. The men moved on. But their words remained. For the rest of the journey home, Tosawi heard nothing else. Only those sentences. Repeating. Echoing. Growing louder. Rebecca would be a fool to refuse. The alternative is staying with that blind Comanche. By the time he reached the cabin, old fears had awakened. Fears he thought were disappearing. For weeks he tried ignoring them. Tried trusting Rebecca. Tried believing she was different. But doubt is powerful once it takes root. Every gift William offered became another reminder. Every rumor became another warning. Every conversation became another threat. Eventually Tosawi began convincing himself of something terrible. Rebecca would leave. Not today. Maybe not tomorrow. But eventually. Everyone else had. Why would she be different? The fear slowly poisoned his happiness. Without realizing it, he began pulling away. His laughter became less frequent. His conversations became shorter. He spent more time alone. Rebecca noticed immediately. She just didn't understand why. One evening she found him sitting silently beside the fireplace. The room felt unusually cold despite the flames. "Tosawi." "Yes." "Did I do something wrong?" His heart tightened. "No." "Then what's happening?" "Nothing." Rebecca frowned. Nothing. The favorite lie of unhappy people. For days she tried reaching him. Every attempt failed. The distance between them continued growing. The closer she moved emotionally, the farther he retreated. Eventually, the tension became impossible to ignore. One snowy afternoon Rebecca finally confronted him. "You've barely spoken to me all week." "I'm speaking now." The coldness in his voice shocked her. "What's wrong?" "Nothing." There it is again. Tosawi stood. "I'm tired." "No." Rebecca stepped forward. "You're afraid." The accuracy of her statement irritated him. "I said I'm fine." "You aren't." The argument ended there. But neither found peace. That night Tosawi sat awake long after Rebecca had gone to bed. His thoughts tortured him. Part of him wanted to trust her completely. Another part remained trapped in 12 years of heartbreak. Fear eventually won. And fear led him to make the worst decision of his life. He decided to test her. A few days later, the opportunity arrived. Rebecca had returned from town. William Carter had once again attempted to court her. She laughed while describing how stubborn the rancher had become. Normally Tosawi would have laughed too. Instead, he remained silent. Rebecca noticed immediately. "What is it?" Tosawi swallowed hard. Then forced himself to speak. "Maybe he's right." Rebecca blinked. "What?" "You should consider his offer." The room became very quiet. "I don't understand." "He can give you things I can't." Rebecca stared at him. "Tosawi. You'd have security. Tosawi. A future. Tosawi. A normal life." The word normal struck like a bullet. Rebecca's expression changed instantly. Pain replaced confusion. "You want me to leave?" "No." But the hesitation betrayed him. Rebecca stepped backward. For the first time since meeting him, genuine hurt filled her eyes. The sight should have stopped him. Instead he continued. "If William Carter offers marriage, maybe you should accept." The silence that followed felt endless. Rebecca looked at him as though seeing a stranger. Then understanding arrived. Slowly. Painfully. And when it did, tears appeared. Not because she was losing him. Because she finally understood why. "You don't trust me." The truth landed heavily between them. Tosawi opened his mouth. No words came. Rebecca laughed bitterly. Not a happy laugh. A broken one. "That's what this is." "It's not." "It is." Her voice trembled. "After everything, you still don't trust me." The guilt hit immediately. Yet Rebecca wasn't finished. Months of patience. Months of loyalty. Months of love poured from her heart. "I stayed." Tosawi lowered his head. Rebecca continued. "When everyone else judged you, I stayed." Each sentence struck harder than the last. "When people talked behind my back, I stayed." Tears rolled down her cheeks. "When winter storms came, I stayed." Her voice cracked. "When other opportunities appeared, I stayed." The room felt smaller. The air heavier. Rebecca pointed toward the door. "Every single day, I chose you." Tosawi couldn't respond. Because she was right. Completely right. "And now," Rebecca whispered. "You want to test me?" The word test sounded ugly. Cruel. Exactly what it was. Rebecca shook her head. "Love cannot survive endless tests." The sentence struck him harder than anything else. Loyalty isn't proven through suspicion. Tears filled her eyes. It's proven through actions. Tosawi felt shame spreading through him. Months of Rebecca's devotion suddenly replayed in his mind. Her kindness. Her sacrifices. Her patience. Her love. And despite all of it, he had doubted her. Not because of anything she had done. Because of what others had done before her. The realization devastated him. Rebecca wiped away tears. "I am not those women." Her voice softened. "But you keep punishing me for their choices." Those words shattered the final wall around his heart. For the first time, Tosawi fully understood what he was doing. Fear had become a prison. And he was forcing Rebecca inside it with him. The woman who loved him most was suffering because he refused to trust her. A long silence followed. Finally Tosawi spoke. His voice was barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry." Rebecca looked away. "I was afraid." "I know. I thought if I prepared myself." His words failed. Rebecca listened quietly. Tosawi stepped closer. "I spent 12 years expecting people to leave." Pain filled his expression. "But you're right." He swallowed hard. "You aren't them." The admission cost him pride. But it freed something inside him. For the first time, he chose trust over fear. And that changed everything. Days later, the largest storm of the season arrived. The settlement gathered inside the church hall for safety, while blizzard winds battered the frontier. Snow slammed against windows. The entire building shook. Families huddled together. Rebecca sat near the back of the room. Although she had forgiven Tosawi, healing still required time. Then something unexpected happened. Tosawi stood. The room gradually fell silent. People turned. Curious. Confused. The blind Comanche rarely sought attention. Yet now he faced the entire community. His hands trembled slightly. Not from fear of the crowd. From fear of losing Rebecca. "I need to say something." The room became completely silent. Tosawi turned toward Rebecca's voice. Every word came directly from his heart. "For 12 years, darkness followed me. People listened carefully. I believed nobody could truly love me." Rebecca felt tears forming again. Tosawi continued. "Then Rebecca entered my life. The entire room watched. She brought kindness where there had been loneliness." His voice strengthened. "Hope where there had been despair. Emotion filled every word. And trust where there had only been fear." Rebecca's eyes filled with tears. Tosawi took a deep breath. Then spoke the words everyone would remember. "The greatest gift Rebecca ever gave me was not helping me live without sight." His voice trembled. "It was teaching me how to see." The room remained perfectly still. Tosawi smiled. "I love her." Gasps echoed throughout the hall. "I love her more than my own pride." More tears appeared in Rebecca's eyes. "More than my fears." His voice cracked. "And more than the darkness I've carried for 12 years. The storm raged outside. But inside, everything felt still. Tosawi extended his hand. Not because he needed guidance. Because he needed her. Rebecca stood. Slowly. Then crossed the room. When her hand slipped into his, the entire hall erupted with applause. Not everyone approved. Not everyone understood. But none of that mattered anymore. Rebecca smiled through tears. "I love you too." For the first time in years, Tosawi felt completely free. Not because his blindness had been cured. It hadn't. The darkness remained. Yet somehow it no longer controlled him. Winter continued for several more weeks. Then, little by little, spring began to arrive. Snow melted. Streams flowed again. Grass returned to the plains. The world slowly awakened. One morning, Rebecca and Tosawi stood outside their cabin together. The air felt warmer. Birdsong returned. A new season had begun. Rebecca slipped her hand into his. Tosawi smiled. For the first time in 12 years, he no longer felt trapped inside darkness. Because Rebecca had brought something far greater than sight into his life. She had brought love. And unlike eyesight, love allowed him to see what truly mattered. Not appearances. Not wealth. Not perfection. Only the heart. Together they watched spring arrive across the frontier, knowing the future would contain challenges. But they would face them side by side. And in that simple truth lay the greatest miracle of all. Love grows through trust, not tests. A loyal heart should be valued, not constantly questioned. Sometimes the greatest miracle is not curing blindness, it is finding someone who sees your soul.